Hi.
We're live,
What did
and
I miss?
and the operative word today is, oh, you know what? We're not live on Facebook. I have to hit another button. So
Oh
let's
no.
try that again, because this is going out on Twitter and YouTube. But let's try this again. Three, two, one. Well, Mike, I think we're, yeah, and you know what? I'm not going to be able to start a watch party because my phone is in the other room. And who knows?
I see it. We're confirmed. We're live.
Well, this is exciting because I'm going to try to use, when we get around to it, there's a 15-minute or 15-second delay while we start the show. I'm going to see if I can run into the other room, go start my watch party. But Mike, we're live.
Hi.
And I already said this once because this is the second time we're doing this. As this is the first time we're trying this version of, I feel like I do this every 2 days, but new software. And we had to start the show 2 times, and now we're about to probably start it for a third. But we are live.
Oh, well, we've been live this whole time. Even though I haven't been on the show, Lou, I've been live.
Yeah. You notice anything different about the show?
I mean, I see Wise Eye is still here. Yeah, no, I mean, everything looks the same, a little shinier, a little smoother, maybe.
Yeah, so there's a couple things missing. we went. I was out. I was without you for 36 hours, and I went V for Vendetta on the bit. Or somebody said GI Jane.
I happened to be so. I'm welcoming myself back on behalf of the lunatics. I did on our vacation spot. This is like an annual family trip with my wife's family, and the place where we stay, there is. I mean, there's not been Wi-Fi like this since we were on Prodigy 35 years ago. I mean, it is, and there's no cell signal really either. I mean, it kind of comes and goes, and so it sort of comes in bursts. And basically, if you're doing email, that's okay, but that's about all you can do. And so we couldn't have tried it from that location. And then there's another place that we go that's more of a permanent home for my wife's aunt, and it's bad. The internet's better. In fact, there's streaming video and stuff there, but the social culture there does not allow me to find any place to record a show. So I did, sitting in the sort of family area, notice you, I think live or whatever passed for live at that time, shaving your head, and I popped on to comment. I've been gone 36 hours, and this is what happened.
That's all it took. Well, now that we've got less hair, we have live internet, and both of us are here. What do you say we start the show?
Oh, let's hit it.
Let's see what happens. And I'm going to race to the other room and see if I can make it back. So let's see what happens.
Well, here we are. I guess I'm extra hairy on Lou's behalf, Mike Franklin.
We tried. Well, by we, I mean really me.
there has to be a better system than this.
You'd think that the software would be out there, but it turns out that I think we have the tools. We don't have the manpower.
I see. This is why, like radio stations and whatnot, there's producers.
Yeah, and we still have Josh Kimber to blame for all of this, I think. But this seems like a really good opportunity to welcome everybody to a very special hotlou happy hour. I am your host, Lou Abramowski, or somewhat less lonely known as hotlou.
I am reunited, and it feels reunited, and it feels so good, Mike Franklin.
That is solid. All right, we're going to see what happens here as I finally get around to starting my watch party on my end. And as I answer our own poll here about whether or not I'm glad Mike is back. And I think it's pretty obvious that I am happy you're back. And I didn't get around to actually wishing you a happy Father's Day. So a happy belated Father's Day.
Thank you very much. That's kind of the origin story of this annual trip. It was Father's Day coincides roughly with the 103rd birthday this past the week of Amanda's grandpa, and he no longer is able to join us on this trip.
But he's still with us,
being 103, but he's still with us.
Wow.
And so, yeah, so it's a celebration, and it's a good time. People fly in, from around the country for this deal, and it's a great time. Lots of northern Minnesota lake adventure-y type stuff. I mean, boats and jet skis and pulling kids behind a tube and eating too much and campfires and marshmallows, the whole thing. I mean, it's just Americana.
Yeah, and I did see that you both used, meaning both you and your wife used the limited internet resources to actually post, I thought, two of the best Happy Father's Day messages that I saw.
Oh, well, thank you very much. It's what we do now. But I sort of was just inspired by all the people saying nice things about their fathers in their life, to just say, well, there's only a limited role that we have in becoming a father. But then being a dad sort of takes a village, to paraphrase the former senator from New York. So.
Yeah. Well, I did my own Father's Day tribute in the form of doing an impression of the way that my dad greeted me on the phone for about 15 years straight, which I'm sure you can remember. Oh, I see. How's it going, world traveler? And you know what? I happen to notice that nobody wished me a happy Father's Day, and I'm not a traditional father, but I consider myself pretty much the father of modern Facebook page marketing, and I didn't get a single happy Father's Day. What's with that?
I would think that Zuck in particular might have reached out on this most noteworthy of occasions.
I think it has to do with the fact that I posted a joke on your timeline about Chuck Norris dying, and it was so clearly a joke. And maybe we can pull this up, one of us, depending on who gets to it faster. But the irony of this is that it was a total joke that Chuck Norris had died of the coronavirus. And
well, it will be you if we're to have it pulled up, because I see that you've your long tradition of disabling my screen sharing capacity until I call you out for it is intact.
If you're ready, go for it, because I'm still loading.
Oh no, I'm not ready either. I spoke too soon. I'd have to pull it up, but
I'll pull it up and we'll summarize it. Maybe you can summarize it as I pull it up, because it's pretty hysterical.
If you're familiar at all, and the lunatics I have no doubt are, with the decade plus long genre of Chuck Norris jokes, basically Chuck Norris is like the big Chungus of his day, in that he is Chungus. And maybe Chungus just became a sort of condensed version of Chuck Norris, because it kind of sounds like that's the way you might say it if you were verbally impaired. But at any rate, Lou posted I think something you're all about to see, those of you who are watching with us, and it was a fake obituary for Chuck Norris about the coronavirus, but it was an extended Chuck Norris joke, basically.
Yeah, so you could see it here. It was an extended one, and the punchline doesn't come till really the end, but
you do have to read through all the way, because I read it and I went, oh no, really?
Yeah.
And then I got to the end and I went, oh, okay, got it.
Yeah. So for the lunatics who can't see the screen or are just listening, I'll read the last two sentences here. But the first couple are basically summarizing a very brief summary of Chuck Norris's life, followed with, however, after his minor inconvenience of death, Chuck has made a full recovery and is reported to be doing quite well. It has also been reported that the coronavirus is in self-isolation for 14 days due to being exposed to Chuck Norris, which is as good a Chuck Norris meme as I've seen in 10 years.
Oh, yeah. No, I mean, that is and in fact, I've seen that meme, basically. Like, when the pandemic first started, I've seen the Chuck Norris joke come out, because it should. Okay. That's what we do. We joke. This is a Chuck Norris joke. So, but then, of course, and I suspect we'll have a couple items here that I've since become caught up on, even though I've been trying to stay self-isolated from the stupid that lives in the world. I will never again make the mistake that I was called out for making, of declaring that we have reached peak stupid.
Yeah, which we have a couple of things in there too. So this might explain why Zuckerberg didn't wish me a happy birthday or happy Father's Day, specifically because PolitiFact fact checked the Chuck Norris death, which was I wouldn't go as far as to say very clearly a joke, but anybody who actually took the time to read the contents of the post knew that it was a joke. And I think most of the reactions being the ha ha reaction might have been some contextual clue. But yeah, like about 2 hours, I think, ish after I published this on your timeline, I got the notice that, of course, Chuck Norris is still with us, and that this post has now been flagged. And you can see what this looks like now, in case you've never seen it. This is what false information looks like in the news feed. So you can still see the contents, but there's this big, huge like disclaimer on it, which, by the way, this came to light about 3 weeks ago now, that Trump can say whatever he wants because he's the president of the United States. And Zuck has taken a very strong position that it's in the public's best interest to see anything and everything that the president of the United States says. But if hotlou says it, I'm getting censored.
I think it's in the interest of the United States that anyone who wants to say something can say it. And it's up to you, the consumer, to figure out whether hotlou or Donald J. Trump or Chuck Norris is full of shit. Oh, man, I didn't just go there. I'm so sorry, Chuck. I would never. I could never.
I'm half tempted to just... my house. I'm half tempted to just cut your feed and kick you out and pretend like I didn't know what happened. And just be like, I'm trying to reconnect Mike. But yeah, so I mean, this is kind of in line with what has happened over the last several days in your absence here, both being off the grid and hopefully getting recharged in reality. But we briefly talked about statues falling, and we have since, and we talked about this not on the show necessarily, but have been electing new mayors of Oakdale every single day.
Yes. And there's going to be a lot of mayors of Oakdale, Lou.
Yeah. And today's, I'm not sure. I didn't make a plaque for it just because it was potentially a little too dicey, but I'm probably going to talk about it. We'll see. I'm feeling a little bit more badass with the shaved head, and I don't know. I'm feeling Joe Roganish. I can say whatever I want, right?
There you go. I can tell you that I need to, based on the reaction of my extended family over the past week, I need to become a Joe Rogan listener. Because I think I would enjoy it, and B, like 2/3 of them, that's what they were talking about for
oh, really?
A big chunk of that, 2/3, but very many were discussing the Joe Rogan podcast. And
Joe Rogan, yeah, Joe Rogan for me, the show isn't. I actually think he's a good interviewer. I think, but he falls under the same category of Ben Shapiro for me. Like, I watch because I want to understand. It's so influential. There's a fair amount of stuff that I just casually disagree with, not like vehemently disagree with, but I can get so much information condensed in a very small period of time, which I think they're both very gifted at.
Sure. Yep.
And actually, I kind of have started watching Joe Rogan intellectually, or academically, I should say, to better understand how he does his interviews. And because, now that the hotlou News Network is launched, it seems like a good skill to have.
We're more fair and balanced than the standard offerings.
I hope so. Well, I do want to share this one with you because I think you missed it yesterday. But the mayor of Oakdale yesterday, I gave it to the president of the New York City Museum of Natural History, Ellen Futter.
Oh, yes. Yeah, I didn't know who she was, but now that you explain what position she holds, I know where you're going here.
Yeah. So for the lunatics who missed it, they have announced plans to take down the Teddy Roosevelt statue, which was erected in honor of our national park system as a dedication to two groups that were historically marginalized in the United States, more so even when that statue was built 95 years ago. and still to this day continue to be marginalized. But it was literally meant to like honor the fact that this was a step in the right direction to hopefully becoming less marginalized.
Teddy Roosevelt, for the vast majority of his career, about which I've read, openly considered himself a progressive. In fact, was a leader in the progressive movement. And so that progressives have come full circle to remove him from our national memory is only fitting with the cancel culture that we now live in.
Yeah, and you may have seen that the Emancipation Memorial, there, I couldn't find the actual person that is behind wanting to take down this Emancipation Memorial, but it was literally built and paid for, I think, by Black organizations as a dedication to the emancipation and freeing of the slaves. And now, because of the way that it's depicted, which is basically Lincoln standing over, I don't know, what's the word, subjugating Black man or former slave. That
well, yeah, and I don't. I'm not sure exactly what. I'm not sure exactly where I read or that I heard somewhere that they picked up on this sort of notion that the statue may look a little condescending to Black people years ago, and they either faced the statue or they moved another statue in the way that sort of makes it look like he's that he's facing in the way of Black educator. And so I don't know, I guess you leave it up to you whether you think this is, subjugating or what, but I do find it kind of fascinating that probably in the same vicinity of this conversation that's going on in Washington, D.C., I heard a clip today of a white woman yelling at a Black police officer about how racism is not about him, it's about her.
Yeah, the Black cop. Yeah, that was spectacular. So, yeah, I mean, the fascinating thing about this Emancipation Memorial is that literally the entire thing was built specifically on the heels of a former slave who started the movement to get it paid for, designed, and built. So it was literally a former slave who is behind it being built and erected in the first place. And to only have a bunch of white people say it's offensive is kind of
Lincoln famously carried on many of these conversations with Frederick Douglass, who I think Lincoln considered a friend and had meetings with in the White House, which at the time was probably seen as a fairly bold move by the president, Lincoln, that is. I reasonably well read about Lincoln. I feel like maybe his contributions to ending slavery should be brought up. It just seems appropriate. And I recognize that the emancipation itself was not necessarily his aim when the war started, but I don't think anybody disagrees with that it was one of the primary motivations for Lincoln and his cabinet at the end of the war and at the war's conclusion. And it seems to be, obviously he died, so we don't know what he would have done with a full second term as president, but his successors certainly carried out imperfectly as it might be, the incorporation of newly freed slaves into the economy. I recognize that wasn't complete until the civil rights movement in the 1960s, and arguably still isn't complete today. But this is back to our conversations we had pre-Mike going on vacation about judging people in the context of their times. Seems like a fairly sensible thing to do. Yeah. And if Abraham Lincoln is not safe on the issue of race relations, then man, look out. Although we've had yesterday, I think it was yesterday in Madison, apparently they pulled down a statue of a, I'm gonna torture it, but it was a Swedish immigrant.
I can't recall either.
In any case, fought in the Civil War and was an open abolitionist.
Yeah, and I think that statue's at the bottom of a lake now, right?
Something like that. Yeah. And
Yeah.
apparently this whole conflagration started with a man, and I've not heard his race described. I don't know if it was a white man, black man, Asian man. I have no idea. But going into a crowded restaurant and yelling in a bullhorn while people were eating dinner, and cops were called, and the cops arrested this man. So I'm inferring in my head that maybe that he was a person of color, but I don't know that. He could have been a white guy. I've heard he's man, so we'll go with that. Anyway, so I see that while I was gone, Lou, the world really only got more stupid, which is, and we haven't even mentioned the whole Bubba Wallace thing yet.
I know.
Which maybe you've talked about on the show. I haven't seen it in a couple of days, but it's just the only thing I'll say about this, and because I feel like the story is fairly cut and dry, that it was a garage door rope and it was hanging where a garage door rope would hang, to pull the garage door down. And who went with Noose? I wouldn't have it doesn't matter to me. I wouldn't have the slightest idea. But two things. One, as of my latest reading on this, Bubba Wallace himself, after the FBI, 15 FBI officers conducted an investigation of this, went on Don Lemon's show last night and said, nope, that was a straight up noose. After literally the federal government said, no noose.
Okay, lunatics, yeah.
October.
So for the lunatics who don't know, something like a year ago, a photo from like a year ago, Bubba Wallace, who is a NASCAR driver, I believe.
One of the only, if not the only, black NASCAR drivers.
Yeah, and NASCAR has been making some pretty amazing, I think, overt decisions and aggressive decisions to kind of snuff out, I think, these appearances that it tends to be like a very redneck culture, which I think probably a lot of NASCAR fans would be okay with being described as that, because the Confederate flag tends to make its way around NASCAR quite a bit. But Bubba Wallace, being one of the few, if not only, NASCAR drivers out there, had this photo from like a year ago in his garage, and he wasn't there. But at the bottom of it was like this knot with a loop at the end of it, presumably so somebody could grab the rope easier. And it doesn't even, in my opinion, the only thing resembling a noose in that is specifically that there's a loop. And I think basically every knot on the planet, up to and including the knots in the cords on my desk, which is a joke that I'm stealing from Ben Shapiro as we try to escape the Ben Shapiro review hour, but can't. He kind of panicked on his show today about the shoelace knot that he had looking like a noose, and the cords on his, it was pretty good. But yeah, that's all it looked like to me, is like somebody tied a knot to make the rope easier to hold.
I still haven't seen a picture of it, but this is still being seen as sort of a great unifying deal, because while everybody was convinced that this was a noose and a potential hate crime, the drivers sort of in very unified fashion sort of made it known. And again, I've been on a news, sort of vacation, so I've been seeing this through various Facebook postings, but they allowed him to kind of come out first, and they sort of made the race at Talladega about him. Now, the one part you just said, that it was about a year ago, that what I've read, and maybe I'm wrong about this, it's happened before, that the rope in question, the FBI said it had been there at least since October, and this is a speedway that's used for multiple races, and that by that I mean contests between racers, not the other.
Careful, we're gonna get canceled.
Yeah,
don't you know how offensive that word is?
I can only guess, but that, so the idea being not that this is Bubba's garage, but this is a garage that's used by contestants at Talladega, and let's say it was there since October. They couldn't have known that at some point in the future he would be the occupant, or his team would be the occupant of this particular garage. Which, by the way, it made me, like, as soon as I got home, I went out. I have a third stall garage. I went out and looked at my garage. There's a little rope that hangs from it, much like the one that you just showed me. I just
no.
cut it to make sure that it's not that nobody could possibly accuse me of hanging a noose to somehow intimidate somebody.
I have to say that I thought I have a feeling it wasn't Ben Shapiro's original joke, but to call it a fake news, fake news,
I actually
that
made
was
that
pretty
joke
good.
myself yesterday, so I was pretty proud that I came up with that at least
good.
before. Or the other one that I enjoyed that I didn't think of that Ben said was, "No news is good news."
That was pretty good. It seemed like that happened on accident to him too, didn't it?
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah, well,
that's how I made up the fake news thing, because I said it turns out this is just fake news, and then
that's pretty funny.
Brilliant.
Yeah, I mean, you gotta admire Bubba for being that aggressive that the FBI 15 agents say that this is not a noose, and then he goes on national television and says it is one anyway, and he presumably is lying that or one of the few FBI agents told him that yes it was, while a bunch of them said it's not. And I think looking at it, I hope everybody can see, the difference here, and that this is
if that's the actual fake news in question, I don't know how you could look at that. I mean, unless it's just what we do in 2020 now, we cannot look at something and not find the outrage.
I mean, I am convinced at this point we are like 2 to 3 hashtags away from Mount Rushmore being just blown up.
I'm surprised it hasn't been defaced yet.
What's happening here?
It's Washington, Lincoln, Jefferson, and Roosevelt. And I believe we've got examples of all of those presidents now. They're at least being talked about.
Yeah, 2 of the 4 were slave owners.
Yep.
One of them, his statue's coming down, and the other one is his role in freeing the slaves is being questioned historically. So odd. I did want to share with you one thing you missed. I don't think you missed it because I think you participated in another Facebook conversation that we had. But the very first, the inaugural, if you will, mayor of Oakdale was from very near our hometown in Duluth, Minnesota. I don't know if you saw Alicia Kozlowski, who claims to be a member of 2 tribes, one of them being my tribe. And it's not clear what member really means. I don't know if that means she's enrolled or has relatives enrolled or exactly what it means. But she is trying to eliminate the word chief from all city administrative titles. So starting with the chief administrative officer. And I don't know if anybody told her that chief is not actually a native word. It's actually an American word that was appropriated from the Native Americans to name the leaders of their tribes.
Yeah, I got nothing. I was made aware of this story. I think this was happening even as we were leaving town, because I know we talked about it around the campfire, and there's just nothing safe. There's nothing safe, and other than this lunacy has to end. There was I couldn't share it, and I don't think I sent it to you just because of paywall issues and whatnot. But at work I've got a subscription to the Wall Street Journal, and there was an absolutely fabulous op-ed about this, about kind of how this is insanity, and you might say it's insanity without historical precedent, because we live in unprecedented times, as every commercial lets us know. But I'll share at least the if I can. I think it's loading here. The headline, and I'll encourage the lunatics to seek it out, because this is just an excellent description of with sort of chock full of stories with our Jacobin moment. And I'm not sure exactly if I'm pronouncing that right. I mean, Jacobin. What it refers to is the French Revolution, and in particular the guillotining of people who were held by the mob, of people who were sort of held to have insufficient revolutionary standing. Robespierre being the leader of the Jacobins, or a leader of the Jacobins, who himself wound up guillotined
Wow.
for having insufficiently revolutionary credentials. So he would be like the Jimmy Kimmel of today, who
Yes.
very few people have done more to promote woke culture and cancel culture these last few years, and now not that it's a surprise. We've some of us have been wondering when he's going to get called out, and I guess the mob came for him now because he's been forced to issue a non-apology apology on the blackface that he donned when he was doing the Karl Malone.
Yeah, we'll put the link in the show notes because it didn't even feel like an apology to me. I wouldn't even go as far as to say it was a non-apology. It was really like, you guys are wrong.
Yeah.
And he said it as softly as he could, right? Yeah.
No, he basically said, you guys are racist, and I've grown, and I'm not a racist, and so I'm not going to give up my voice to whatever, call you racist, I guess. I don't know. I found him so off-putting for years that I kind of can't pay attention to. I am attributing sort of a negative motive to Mr. Kimmel, because I feel that
I mean, I will say what I like about what happened there is he could have succumbed to the mob at that point, right? And he didn't. He's one of the few people that's like straight up stood up to it and said, you guys are wrong.
Which is fine, but he didn't stand up to it and say, you guys are wrong. This was me impersonating a celebrity, and in fact, a series of celebrities who happened to be black. And that part of the statement was fine about his skin color was as much of the impersonation as the huge muscles I put on and the bald head that were, just a part and parcel of who Karl Malone was at that time, and still is. I think maybe not the muscles so much anymore, but which that part of it was fine. But then it was, I'm not going to be giving up my platform. But then it was, but I've since grown, and I see now that that's racist, and it's like, okay, that's why I said the non-apology apology.
I mean, I'll admit that I'm a bit ignorant when it comes to understanding what it is about a white person doing an impersonation of a black person and altering their appearance to look more like them. That, because I think there's a world of difference between
1920s Al Jolson, Hey Mammy,
right, hiring a white person to stereotypically paint their skin to look dark and then play up stereotypes seems to be that seems a world apart from me for somebody who's literally just doing an impression for the sake of humor. And it's funny that we have two late night hosts named Jimmy who have both blackface history and history. It wasn't even 20 years ago.
Exactly. And that to me is a whole part of the story that these guys didn't put on offensive makeup to try and sort of mock characteristics of people in a hidden fashion. Jimmy Fallon did,
or a group of people for that matter. It was one person. Yeah.
I think in both cases they did this on live, or at least on nationally syndicated or live broadcasts on TV.
In the context of friendly fun.
Right. And for 20 years almost, nobody found this even remotely offensive.
Right. It comes across as very insincere, just like the rope in Bubba's garage that sits there, in plain sight for the longest time. And only when people feel like there's an opportunity to cancel somebody, does somebody kind of come forward, which is why I want to bring up this weird thing, which might get us canceled. And why not? Right as you come back, let's take care of it right now. What do you think?
Let's hit it. I've already doomed myself to any functional career in front of the public. So
yeah, I mean, let's be real here. And I mean, I think this is evident. Jimmy Kimmel is evidence that, and Abraham Lincoln is evidence of it, that this is an inescapable cycle. Nobody can criticize anybody without invariably or inexorably heading down the path to you yourself being canceled and being held to some standard that you can't predict in the future that's going to get you canceled. Now, this one's far more serious, so I'm going to try to tone it down, but try to still bring in and I'm going to get a couple of the details wrong, unfortunately. But I'm just going to leave it at, I have a friend who kind of reminds me of Chris D'Elia. Do you know who Chris D'Elia is, Mike?
No.
Yeah, that's right. It always surprised me that you're not like on top of, because he's a relatively famous stand-up comedian.
Okay. No.
Yeah. So in any case, he tends to be on, I think, the more shock type humor, and somewhat, I mean, not ironically, but like seriously, unfortunately, played a pedophile in Workaholics like 10 years ago.
Okay.
And now a bunch of, an actual child molester on Workaholics. But now a handful of younger or women who were like in their teenage years have brought up some personal messages to and from him, that he was potentially grooming them, and potentially trying to actually solicit nude photos from somebody as young as 16. Now, I went out looking to try to find the actual smoking gun. It's probably there. And it seems like some of it probably hasn't surfaced, because a handful of his relatively close friends have come out and said, hey, what I'm seeing is really disgusting. So that could be just aligning with cancel culture and trying to pile on. But he also lost his contracts with a couple of agencies here. But I'm not going to pull up the actual name because in the context of not doxing anybody, although she herself was out on Twitter saying this. So there are a handful of women now who are piling on, who are adults, who were literally like 19 and 20, while Chris D'Elia was older than them, but it's not like it wasn't as if he was some like 45-year-old executive who held the power over this individual for the future of their career, like
Sure.
what we saw with Weinstein, right? What we have is a handful of women who are basically accusing him of being a creep, but not breaking any crime or even really harassment. One of them in particular, I think, is just like disgusting, that is getting tons of attention, was this 19-year-old girl who pursued him. I shouldn't say girl, I should say woman, because at that point she's an adult. And I think Chris D'Elia was still in his 20s, maybe his late 20s at the time. So like something that I think fully 100% qualifies as creep territory. But she pursued him, went over to his house. She creeped him out even more. It sounds like nothing super sexual happened. And then she just left. And she's piling on with the story. And this is the person I wanted to like make as the mayor of Wokedale today, but I thought might be a little bit too aggressive, and a little bit unfair. But I think that I really want to hear from the lunatics on, you know, whether that falls under the category of like cancelable offense or just like gray area super creepdom. I don't know.
You just added way more context because I hadn't heard of him, but once you described the Workaholics thing, I had seen a text exchange about this morning, and the implication that I saw this morning was that he was fired, basically, or removed his contracts, whatever it was, for playing this character, which would be absurd if that was the case. But no, it sounds like there's some actual potentially bad. I mean, like, what the hell do I know? I didn't know. I've never heard of the guy, but potentially bad, individual actions, which is appropriate to cancel somebody over if this is true.
Totally.
And he was a child molester or attempted child molester. yeah, fire his ass. If he was fired for playing a child molester, that's a different deal. Fire the writers, anything else, and the producers. At that point, the guy's just trying to make a living.
Yeah, and the weird thing about this is that I can't remember who broke the story, but the woman who originally stood up to him shared a bunch of private messages between the two of them. But it's really weird that in that text exchange, she is 16, but it's not entirely clear that she's expressed that to him. And she was the one, again, that actually reached out to him. And he does at some point say, send a pic. And it doesn't say send a nude pic or anything like that. And she returns a panda picture. And then he makes a joke about like, that's an angry panda or something like that. And some people on Twitter have said that once she said she was 16, he cut off the conversation. And his apology really fell under the non-apology apology. It was more along the lines of like, I have to own the fact that I got caught up in the culture here, and I'm really sorry if I offended people. It wasn't like I really screwed up. I hope you forgive me. I'm going to do harder, or I'm going to do better, blah, blah, blah. But when I saw that this person who was 19 at the time and pursuing him was getting on top of this, saying that and it was even before he was like hugely, like he's not even famous really now. Like, I think he's probably like, I'll bet he's like a top 10 famous comedian right now, but this isn't Harvey Weinstein who holds the keys to the kingdom of some aspiring actress's career. But there is some celebrity dynamic happening between them. But this was like years ago, even before people really knew who he was. He was showing up on, in bits on Workaholics and things like that. But I'd really like to hear from the lunatics in the comments to help me understand this, because I don't understand how a D-list celebrity being a creep and even responding to somebody pursuing him qualify and maybe being creepier warrants falling under cancel culture. And I'm not even necessarily talking about all the other accusations, because from what I've seen, that sounds terrible. But the fact that this other woman like just got to pile on and added like 10,000 new followers to her Twitter account overnight, just by calling him a creep, seems really opportunistic to me.
This is the kind of incentivized behavior that we've created, though. And you can go back to Justice Kavanaugh hearings, and I'm not referring specifically to Christine Blasey Ford, but there was a half a dozen other women who were accusing him without a shred of evidence. At least Christine Blasey Ford was willing to put her own name on the line and provide something approximating evidence as far as specifics and things like that. But the others were jumping. I mean, or Aziz Ansari, what happened to him, which was something fairly similar during the when Me Too was our sort of chief focus of society. You are incentivized with, as you point out, Twitter followers, interviews, fame, money. It's disgusting, and this is the role we're carving out for ourselves on the show, of making sure that there's at least some minor sanction in the public sphere for piling on to what, if these are credible accusations against them on the other ones, then you're just disgusting. You're just trying to cash in on something that's an actual terrible crime.
Yeah, and I don't know. I'm having a really hard time with this one, and I was having a hard time even with the original accusation, to be honest. And like I said, I know I'm coming across as like super ignorant on this one, because I am. I wouldn't say I actively ignored all the facts, but in the limited opportunity I had to look at it, it was.
I'll do some reading about it too, because I hadn't heard of the guy. Absent a text exchange this morning, the only thing that stood out to me was Workaholics, and it was a show I'd heard of but never seen.
Yeah.
So
in any case, I'd like to be proven wrong on this whole thing, because even that original accusation, just looking at the messages, it looks like they were deliberately redacted in parts to make him look worse. Like,
sure.
I mean, there's like 4 texts going back and forth. So we didn't see like the entire conversation. And it seems like that person had an opportunity to disclose the whole thing and just chose not to, potentially to make it look worse than it was. But I guess we'll see. So that's all I really wanted to do is catch up and, you know, show off my new haircut, you know, and I'll say
it's a bold move.
I'll say, and this is not said without a bit of irony, but it's kind of growing on me.
Well done. Well played.
Yeah.
Well, I've got full vacation hair that is in need of a legal haircut and a shave and all of that. So I will be, I'll be maintaining my position that what's up there is staying at least until God takes it.
Well, I took the clippers originally, and then I took a Bic to it on Saturday, and then again today. And I'm learning a lot about that whole thing. But everybody told me I was going to cut the hell out of my scalp, and I did not do that, despite being. I shouldn't even say it. I'll get cut off right away.
Yep, you will. You will, absolutely.
Okay. All right. We're going to just wrap up before things get even worse. But glad to have you back, Mike.
Great to be back.
And it's weird because tomorrow's show might be recorded without you, but we're going to talk about that in off air in a moment. And then Friday's show, we're still hoping to have Best Christmas Ever back on, but we're trying to work out additional guests to come on. So tomorrow might be the rawest hotlou happy hour yet. So I hope you'll tune in for that.
Is the bat available?
Well,
we don't want to have it be a raw bat. No, that's a terrible idea.
Please cook your bats all to an internal temperature of at least 170 degrees.
104. Well, yeah, 170 be even better. I was gonna say 140, but
yeah, that's 140 is medium bat.
Okay, all right.
We should all be eating well done bat until the vaccine's here.
I think that makes perfect sense.
Okay. All right. Thanks everybody for tuning in to a very special Hot Mike 3 returns hotlou happy hour. I am your host, hotlou.
I am happy to be back, Mike Franklin.